Hi everyone, my name is Sherry Garel, and I'll be presenting to you this research on preventing fraud, its ramifications, and plausible solutions in fulfillment of the accounting capstone course at Florida Southern College. My mentor is Dr. Will Quilliam. We took a systematic approach in this research by examining what is fraud, then looking at the ramifications to include a statistical analysis from data provided in the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners 2022 report to the nations, as well as other sources. Recent fraud cases were reviewed and fraud prevention techniques. Fraud can be defined as using false representations to gain an advantage over another or against an entity. That may not be an all-inclusive definition, but we are sure that fraud is synonymous with deception. Albrecht said, "It is always the person you trust most who is in the best position to con you or commit fraud." We will see later in this presentation that many trusted individuals are those who are in fact guilty of fraud. There are three types of occupational fraud: asset misappropriation, financial statement fraud, and corruption. So we'll see that asset misappropriation is fraud committed by the employees against the firm, whereas financial statement fraud is fraud committed on behalf of the firm by the employees, and corruption is dishonest acts that often fuel these two other types of fraud. Some of these includes grease payment, conflict of interest, and the sort. Now, of the three types of occupational fraud, asset misappropriation is the most prevalent, representing 86% of cases reviewed in the ACFE report. The fraud triangle is the model most popularly used for explaining fraud. It includes three segments: perceived pressure, perceived opportunity, and rationalization. Perceived pressure refers to external forces that usually drive individuals to violate their ethical standards. Perceived opportunities arise when there are vulnerabilities in systems that these individuals exploit. And rationalization refers to how they justify the dishonest acts as acceptable. Now, the fraud triangle is credited to criminologist Donald Cressy. However, the actual term was not used until Steve Albrecht solidified it in history in the early 1990s. Worldwide statistics has revealed some of the ramifications of fraud. The ACFE reports that over $3.6 billion in losses existed. Financial statement fraud was almost 6 times that of asset misappropriation. PwC's report showed a rise in platform fraud. 51% of those respondents experienced fraud in the last 2 years. Of those who experienced platform fraud, 53% experienced financial losses, and over 25% of the organizations who experienced financial loss lost over $1 million. That is significant. 5% of revenue is lost to fraud each year. This can lead to economic instability because reduced firm profitability leads to job cuts and eventually impacts the economy. Now, the median velocity for cases reported in the ACFE study was 8,300 per month. Financial statement fraud had the greatest loss of 32,900. These numbers are alarming, but consider that a typical fraud can last 12 to 18 months before it is detected. Mid to executive level staff had the highest median losses. It shows that being tenured does not always mean that one is trustworthy. The ACFE report showed that a poor tone at the top contributed to 10% of the internal control weaknesses, which is a significant fraud prevention technique. So we do have some concerns there, and that explains why financial statement fraud is one of the ones with the highest median losses. ACFE looked at data from 8 regions across the world and realized that corruption is the most common occupational fraud scheme, and tip was the most popular detection method. So that tells me that programs like the whistleblower programs, they are actually effective. Another thing that really came out to me from looking at the data is that even our best internal control systems are susceptible to breaches. Changing the environment will result in more exposure to fraud. Unfortunately, many organizations do not report fraud out of fear of reputational damage. Only 58% of the ACFE respondents took criminal action, while only 29% took civil action. There have been a number of cases in the media recently showing where fraud has been exposed in organizations. Let's talk about four of them. FTX, which is the cryptocurrency platform that was discovered to be involved in fraud in 2022, was run by Sam Bankman-Fried, and over $8 billion in FTX customer funds are missing. The attorneys are scrambling right now to sell assets to work towards restitution efforts, and Bankman-Fried faces both civil and criminal charges. You may also remember the case of Iran, which was run by Elizabeth Holmes and her accomplice Ramesh Balwan. The two were involved in financial statement fraud from as far back as 2014. Now, the company was a healthcare startup, and it was found that they were falsely purporting the capabilities of their technologies and providing inaccurate blood test results. World-renowned Olympic sprinter Usain Bolt was himself a victim of a fraud scheme valued at over $12.7 million. Now, what was alarming was that his investment company is alleged to be responsible for removing the funds. This is being investigated by the relevant authorities, and the Jamaica Financial Services Commission is seeking to restore confidence in its financial sector. The athlete is yet to receive restitution, and it is said that he had reserved these funds for his retirement. As a student, this one also caught my attention, as the University of South Florida was a victim of a fraud scheme done by their accounting manager, Ralph Puglisi. Now, Puglisi was responsible for accounting at the nonprofit University Medical Service Association. And what happened was that he misused company credit cards to pay for adult websites and personal luxuries since 2014. So these four cases were all examples of occupational fraud. We can see that Panton and Puglisi were involved in asset misappropriation, but Bankman-Fried and Holmes were involved in both asset misappropriation and financial statement fraud. In all four cases, the fraud was fueled by greed, abuse of trust, and it was because of a breach of internal controls. The aim of this research is to explore fraud prevention. By the time fraud has occurred, significant losses has already occurred in many cases. Organizations' best approach is to deter the fraud to begin with, and executives have a key role to play by demonstrating ethical leadership. This will allow others in the organization to see that we have an honest organization culture and be less likely to yield to external pressures. Strong internal controls are effective in fighting fraud. Accounting firms like CG Tax and Advisory agrees with this, and SOX and COSO guidelines have been proven to protect companies' financial assets. Unfortunately, 29% of the study respondents lacked internal controls, and an alarming 20% overrode existing controls. ACFE also found that 43% of organizations failed to run adequate background checks, and of the 57% that ran these checks, 21% had red flags. Milchick and Riley proposed gaining better insight into the minds of fraudsters. Auditors should focus on better understanding rationalization. This research is surmising that using ethical fraudsters, similar to the concept of ethical hacking, might be a viable solution. It is hoped that with further guidance, this could be further explored. Thank you. This research would not have been possible without the diligent work of authors before us. I'd like to acknowledge them here. Just thank you for your time today.